suddenly, you're Sanguinius fighting Horus. Reality breaks! The Black Rage claims you! Now we enter the story!
Chapter 1. The Angel's Final Scream. Imagine being hardwired to experience your father's murder over and over again, unable to escape the memory encoded directly into your genetic code. This is the reality for every blood angel who falls to the Black Rage, a psychic curse so profound that it transforms the Imperium's most noble warriors into monsters wearing the faces of angels. What makes this curse particularly tragic is not just what it does to these warriors, but how it happened in the first place. Before we dive deeper into this fascinating and heartbreaking aspect of Warhammer lore, I have a question for you. If you could remember every detail of a traumatic event you never actually experienced, would that memory be any less real than your own? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you find this exploration valuable, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the darkest corners of the 41st millennium. The Black Rage is not simply madness or battle fury. It represents something far more specific and far more terrible. When a blood angel succumbs to the Black Rage, they do not merely lose control or give in to bloodlust. Instead, they become trapped in a specific moment of history, reliving the final hours of their Primarch Sanguinius as he faced the arch-traitor Horus aboard the Vengeful Spirit during the Siege of Terra. The afflicted warrior genuinely believes they are Sanguinius himself, experiencing his wounds, his desperation, his determination, and ultimately his death. Every enemy they see becomes Horus in their perception. Every battle becomes that final confrontation. This is no ordinary genetic flaw but rather a psychic imprint permanently embedded in the Blood Angel's gene seed, transmitted across 10,000 years like a recording that never stops playing. The death that echoed through time. Understanding the Black Rage requires understanding the moment of its creation. During the final days of the Horus Heresy, Sanguinius confronted his corrupted brother Horus aboard the Warmaster's flagship. The Primarch of the Blood Angels knew he was walking into his own death, yet he went anyway, driven by duty and the slim hope that he might weaken Horus enough for the Emperor to finish what he started. The duel was brutal and one-sided. Horus, empowered by all four Chaos Gods, had become something far beyond even a Primarch's ability to defeat. He had hoped to sway Sanguinius to his side, believing the angel could be persuaded to join his new order. When Sanguinius refused, again and again, Horus stopped holding back. The details of Sanguinius' death are as horrific as they are specific. Horus lifted the wounded angel off the ground, pinning him in the talon of Horus, that infamous lightning claw that had already spilled so much blood. Every fractured bone in Sanguinius' body screamed as he hung there, blood forced from his lips by the pressure. In a final act of defiance, the angel gouged at Horus' face with his bare hand. Enraged, the Warmaster dropped his brother, and as Sanguinius tried to rise one last time, wanting to die on his feet, Horus struck. The double crack of spine and neck echoed through the chamber. Blood dripped in the sudden silence. The talon opened, and what fell to the deck was so broken and mangled it barely resembled the magnificent being it had once been. But death was not the end of Sanguinius' suffering, nor was it contained to that single moment aboard the Vengeful Spirit. The instant the angel died, a psychic shockwave erupted across reality itself. On Terra below, every single blood angel in the Legion felt it. Brother Ronas of the Anabasis Company experienced it first, as his heart stopping for 8 beats and his blood freezing in his veins. Then it ignited. A spasm lashed through him from head to toe, violent enough that he collapsed immediately. He was not alone. Across the battlefield, blood angels of the Anabasis Company collapsed in turn, brought down by shared pain as surely as by any bolt round. Their bodies thrashed and contorted against the broken ground. Weapons discharged accidentally from spasming hands. Standards and banners toppled as their bearers lost control. Their screams filled the air, a choir of agony that marked the birth of the Black Rage. The madness made flesh. What happened next reveals the true horror of the Black Rage. The afflicted blood angels did not simply feel pain, they experienced something far more comprehensive and devastating. The psychic backlash from Sanguinius' death forced them to relive his memories, his dreams both fulfilled and unfulfilled, his visions realized and unrealized, and most powerfully, every permutation of his final confrontation with Horus. This was more than a genetic flaw or corruption of their modified biology. This was insanity unlocked by the death of their father, an empathetic torment that flashed his life and his murder before their eyes in excruciating detail. The afflicted warriors experienced the red thirst they had concealed in shame, but magnified 100-fold. It was a consuming, unquenchable rage that expanded through their consciousness. Breathless and bloodthirsty, the immediate consequences were catastrophic. Almost every blood angel in the field during that fateful hour was already engaged with the traitor forces when the rage struck. Within seconds, their enemies transformed in their perception from mere traitors into their singular target, Horus. Skills honed through decades of warfare evaporated. Tactical acumen refined through countless campaigns vanished. The exquisite martial prowess that had distinguished the Blood Angels' legion disappeared as if it had never existed. Techniques were forgotten, weapons abandoned in favor of hands and teeth. They became mindless and feral, killing everything around them. Traitors who had been holding them at bay moments before with blade and shield were now torn apart by warriors who fought with raw, animalistic fury. Here is where we encounter the central paradox of the Black Rage. In their insanity, the Blood Angels became far more dangerous than they had ever been in their disciplined state. The traitor forces found themselves facing an enemy that felt no pain, acknowledged no tactics, and refused to stop until every target was destroyed. The Blood Angels swiftly turned the tide of battle, playing a crucial role in the ultimate defeat of Horus' ground forces on Terra. Victory came at a terrible price, however. These were not the noble warriors fighting for humanity's future, these were berserkers who had lost everything that made them more than killers. When the visions eventually faded and the survivors regained their senses, they were left to confront what they had become in their madness. The permanent scar. The Black Rage did not end when the battle concluded. Sanguinius' death had left a permanent psychic imprint within the gene code of his sons, a flaw that still exists in every Blood Angel more than 10,000 years later. The genetic memory of their Primarch's final moments became part of their very being, encoded into their gene seed and passed down through every generation. No Blood Angel is immune. Every warrior carrying Sanguinius' genetic legacy bears this curse, wondering not if they will succumb, but when. The affliction can strike at any time, though it most commonly manifests on the eve of battle, as if the approach of violence triggers the traumatic memory buried in their genes. The symptoms are unmistakable and terrifying to witness. The afflicted warrior begins to speak as Sanguinius, using his words and mannerisms. They relive specific moments from his life, particularly his final battle aboard the Vengeful Spirit. In their perception, reality has been completely overwritten by the psychic imprint. They see enemies where there are allies, Horus where there are simply foes to be fought. No amount of reasoning or appeals to brotherhood can reach them once the rage has fully taken hold. The warrior they once were is gone, subsumed by the overwhelming presence of their Primarch's death throes. The Blood Angels have developed specific protocols for managing this curse. Those who show the defining symptoms on the eve of battle are not locked away or executed. Instead, they are given a final honor, the chance to die a warrior's death. These afflicted brothers are formed into the Death Company, marked with black armor and red crosses that signify their condemned status. They are unleashed upon the enemy under the guidance of the chapter's chaplains, warriors who alone possess the authority and will to direct the insane. The Death Company fights without fear, without hesitation, and without mercy. They seek death in battle, hoping to achieve in their madness what Sanguinius achieved in his final moments, victory through sacrifice. Not all who fall to the Black Rage receive even this grim honor. Those who succumb outside of battle, or who survive their deployment with the Death Company still trapped in madness, face a different fate. They are taken to the Tower of the Lost on Baal, a place of containment where the permanently afflicted are kept in isolation. There they howl away their mindless rage, trapped forever in the moment of Sanguinius' death, without risk of harming their battle brothers or revealing the chapter's shame to the wider Imperium. Some remain in this state for years, even decades, their enhanced physiology keeping them alive long past when a normal human would have succumbed to the trauma. They are the lost ones, warriors who will never know peace, never know clarity, and never escape the prison of their genetic memory. The burden shared by all. The Black Rage affects not just individual Blood Angels but the entire chapter and all its successors. The flesh tearers, blood drinkers, angels sanguine, and dozens of other successor chapters all carry Sanguinius gene seed, and with it, his curse. Each chapter maintains its own Tower of the Lost, its own death company, its own somber rituals for warriors who fall to the rage. The burden weighs heavily on chapter leadership, particularly the chaplains who must identify the afflicted, guide them in their final battles, and when necessary, deliver the Emperor's mercy to those who have outlived their usefulness. Astorath the Grim, High Chaplain of the Blood Angels and Redeemer of the Lost, has made it his life's work to travel between all the Blood Angels' successor chapters, seeking out those who have fallen and ensuring they receive a proper end. Astorath's role reveals another dimension of the Black Rage tragedy. He does not cause the affliction, despite what some believe. Rather, he is the instrument of its final resolution. When a warrior has succumbed so completely that they can no longer serve even in the death company, when they have become a threat to their own brothers or lost every trace of the noble warrior they once were, Astorath arrives with his massive executioner's axe. Most blood angels feel profound discomfort in his presence, knowing that he may one day come for them. He is a necessary evil, a reminder that the Black Rage offers no escape, no cure, and no hope beyond an honorable death in service to the Emperor. The question that haunts every blood angel is simple yet terrible: when will it happen to me? They watch their brothers carefully, looking for the early signs. They maintain rigorous discipline, hoping that strength of will might delay or prevent the inevitable. They pray to their Primarch's memory, seeking guidance from the very source of their curse. But deep down, they know the truth. The psychic imprint of Sanguinius death waits in their genes, patient and inescapable. It is not a question of if, but when. Not a matter of worthiness or weakness, but simple genetic fate. Every blood angel lives knowing that one day they may wake to find themselves trapped in their father's final nightmare, unable to distinguish past from present, memory from reality, until a chaplain's blade or an enemy's weapon finally grants them the death they seek. This is the foundational truth of the Black Rage. It is a curse born from love and loyalty, transmitted through blood and gene seed, and inescapable by any means known to the Imperium. But knowing what the Black Rage is and understanding how the Death Company functions in practice are two different things entirely. How do chaplains actually control warriors who believe they are fighting Horus aboard the Vengeful Spirit 10,000 years ago? Chapter 2, Guiding the Damned. Controlling warriors who genuinely believe they are fighting Horus 10,000 years in the past presents unique challenges that no amount of traditional military discipline can solve. The Blood Angels' chaplains do not lead the Death Company in the conventional sense. They cannot issue orders and expect obedience. They cannot appeal to reason or remind the afflicted of their true identities. Instead, these chaplains must guide warriors whose reality has been completely overwritten by psychic trauma, pointing them toward the enemy while preventing them from turning on their own allies. The methods they employ reveal something fascinating about how deeply the conditioning of a space marine runs, and how even madness cannot fully erase decades of hypno-indoctrination. The process begins long before battle, in the chambers where the afflicted are kept. On Baal, this means the Tower of Amareo, where those who have fallen to the Black Rage await their final deployment. The preparations are meticulous and carefully choreographed. Chaplain Ordemarl, master of the Tower of Amareo, demonstrates this during the events of the Devastation of Baal. His voice resonates throughout the cathedral as he intones prayers loudly and deliberately. Calming choral music begins to permeate the air, softening the atmosphere and leaching away thoughts of blood. The music replaces violent impulses with reflective sorrow, triggering the deep hypno-indoctrination that every blood angel receives during their transformation. Gradually, the agitated members of the Death Company quiet as these conditioning protocols activate. The effect is temporary, lasting only as long as the prayers and music continue, but it provides a crucial window of relative calm during this brief period of reduced aggression. Serfs from various chapters emerge from their hiding places in the aisles. They move swiftly, attaching death ribbons to the newly painted black armor of the afflicted warriors. The most volatile battle brothers become calm enough to approach with minimal risk. Experienced hands release chains and complete the arming rituals while the Death Company remains entranced by the liturgy. Other chaplains whisper additional prayers as they work. The serfs are assisted by specially modified servitors, machines capable of restraining the damned if necessary and disposable enough that their loss would be inconsequential. When the preparations are complete, Ordemarl signals to his fellow chaplains. At the back of the cathedral, the 3 rage gates open, revealing large lift cages prepared to transport the damned to the dungeons of Amareo, where they will remain until required for battle. The man who should not exist. Among all the blood angels who have fallen to the black rage across 10 millennia, only one has ever managed to retain any measure of control. Chaplain Lamart succumbed to the curse while the blood angels were preparing to deploy against Orks on Hadriath 11. Like every member of a death company, his options were clear: fall in battle, or in the unlikely event he survived, face execution by High Chaplain Asterath. Yet after the battle ended, something unprecedented occurred. When Lamart was taken to the company's field apothecarian, he insisted that he remained in control of himself. Asterath hesitated, confronted with a paradox that defied everything the chapter understood about the Black Rage. Lamart was clearly in the grip of the condition, exhibiting all the telltale symptoms, yet he remained coherent and able to restrain himself from attacking his own brothers. Asterath made an incredible decision that broke with centuries of precedent. He sent Lamart's instasis back to Baal to be thoroughly examined by the sanguinary priests. Every test they ran showed the same startling conclusion: Lamart had been struck by the rage, yet his willpower was keeping it in check, a thing unheard of in the entire history of the chapter. The biological markers were unmistakable. The psychic imprint had activated. By every measurable standard, Lamart should have been lost to madness. Instead, he demonstrated conscious control over impulses that had overwhelmed every other blood angel who had experienced them. The sanguinary priests warned Asterath that it would be impossible for Lamart to stay in control forever. The Black Rage was not a condition that could be permanently suppressed through willpower alone. Eventually, inevitably, it would consume him. Asterath offered Lamart a unique role that acknowledged both his remarkable control and his inevitable fate. He would become the guardian of the lost, the leader of the Death Company. Under his guidance, those blood angels lost to the rage fight like heroes of legend, winning some measure of redemption before they fall. Between engagements, Lamart is returned to stasis to protect his battle brothers from the rage, limiting his exposure to situations that might trigger his complete descent. His leadership has elevated the Death Company to unparalleled levels of ferocity and effectiveness. He harnesses his formidable willpower to maintain control over his actions while simultaneously channeling the Black Rage's fury. This allows him to guide the Death Company in glorious charges that surpass even the most revered legends of old. Some whisper that Lamart's eventual fall is inevitable, while others see him as a sign of hope that perhaps other blood angels might also master their curse. Both perspectives contain truth, and neither offers real comfort. Directing the storm. In the field, chaplains employ specific techniques to keep Death Company warriors focused on the correct targets. They cannot simply order the afflicted to attack, as traditional command structures have no meaning to warriors reliving Sanguinius memories. Instead, chaplains must reframe every situation within the context of the Death Company's altered reality. When a Death Company Marine pulls back to swing his weapon while shouting curses at Horus, but the target in question is actually an innocent civilian, a chaplain must intervene immediately. He shouts something along these lines: "No, brother. These are innocents ensnared by the archtraitor's deceit. The true enemy lies ahead, and his followers are gathering around him. We must press on and allow these civilians to escape as we face the treacherous Horus." This intervention proves effective. The Death Company Marines, who had nearly harmed the humans, redirect their assault. The chaplain then quickly tells the civilians to move, that they are late in following the retreat order, before rejoining his squad. This technique works because of how deeply the conditioning of a Space Marine runs. Many Death Company Marines remain heavily influenced by the intense indoctrination that accompanied their transformation into transhumans. Their instinctive, unwavering obedience to chaplains and other leaders such as captains and chapter masters is deeply ingrained in them. This conditioning often helps them break through the mental fog and focus on the targets the chaplains direct them toward. The chaplains do not try to bring the afflicted back to reality, instead, they work within the framework of the delusion. Every enemy becomes Horus or his servants. Every objective becomes part of the final assault on the Vengeful Spirit. Every battle becomes the climactic confrontation that the Death Company believes they are fighting. When this system works, the results are devastating to the enemy. During the War of Broken Wings in the year 261 of the 33rd millennium, the Angel Sanguine faced a unified armada of vessels drawn from the Night Lord's Legion and its myriad allies. The traitors assaulted the Angel Sanguine's battle fleet in high orbit above the world of Anzyra, pressing them into a desperate defensive battle to prevent mass bombardment of their fortress monastery. The engagement lasted several days of protracted void war and boarding actions. To force a final resolution, the Angel Sanguine offered perfect bait. They allowed their flagship, the Crua Domina, to be crippled and boarded by hundreds of enemy traitor marines. While Space Marines defended the battle barge to keep it from being taken as a prize, the Angel Sanguine deployed their true weapon. A full 300 Death Company warriors were sent by boarding torpedoes to slaughter their way through the vulnerable crews of 8 enemy capital ships. These included the renowned Lies of Dawn of the Forsworn and the Brotherhood of Darkness warship Sightless Godling. 300 warriors, each believing they were Sanguinius fighting Horus, tore through 8 capital ships. The 7th Black Crusade provides another example of the Death Company's effectiveness when properly guided. During the long years of that conflict, the full might of the Blood Angels chapter fell upon a vast Black Legion warband on the world of Mak'kan. The conflict ultimately ended in near extinction for the Blood Angels at the hands of Abaddon the Despoiler and his primary lieutenants, the Sorcerer Lord Iskondok and the Swordmaster Telemakan Lyras. The Blood Angels' Reclusiarch Thelastian Joris found himself in command of the Shattered Remnants. With his chapter devastated, the chaplain endured weeks of hardship in the wilderness while keeping his crazed warriors undetected on Mak'kan. When the time was right, Joris led his Death Company in a lightning raid behind enemy lines. They butchered the unprepared sworn warriors of the Despoiler's honor guard. This allowed the Reclusiarch to lock blades with Abaddon himself, becoming one of the few Imperial heroes to ever land a blow against the Warmaster of Chaos. The Death Company made this possible. Their fury channeled through the chaplains will into a surgical strike that achieved what conventional tactics could not. When control fails, the chaplains' methods work only as long as they can maintain the framework of controlled delusion. When that framework breaks down, the results are catastrophic for everyone nearby. The Flesh Tearers, a successor chapter of the Blood Angels, suffer from particularly severe manifestations of the Black Rage and Red Thirst. Their Death Company is notoriously difficult to control, and incidents of friendly fire are tragically common. One such incident occurred when guardsmen were holding the line against an army of Orks. The Flesh Tearers attacked from the rear, butchering the Orks with expected efficiency. But upon slaughtering their intended targets, the Death Company continued their charge. They attacked the guardsman gun line and killed all of them. The conditioning that should have allowed chaplains to redirect them had failed. The psychic fury driving them forward recognized no distinction between Orc and human, seeing only more enemies to destroy in their relentless reenactment of Sanguinius' final battle. During the Devastation of Baal, Commander Dante made a desperate decision that reveals the double-edged nature of the Death Company. When Tyranids breached the Arx Angelicum itself, Dante commanded the Tower of Amareo to be opened and the damned unleashed. What emerged were not the warriors who had been sent to the tower. They were gene-seed abominations, twice the size of Space Marines, with bulging muscles, yellow fangs, and dry red skin. The Black Rage had transformed them into something monstrous over months or years of confinement. These creatures were sent to hold the ground and die so that others could escape to the walls. It is easy to assume the entire contingent perished there, consumed by the Tyranid swarm, achieving in death what they could no longer accomplish in life. They bought time with their bodies and their fury, the only currency they had left to spend. The Death Company's effectiveness makes them a tempting tactical asset, but one that carries enormous risk. Modern combat reports show how quickly control can slip away. In one engagement, Flesh Tearer's Death Company was thrown into enemy lines on the first turn, attempting to assassinate an enemy sorcerer. The assault nearly succeeded, falling just short when the target made a series of improbable saves. The gamble failed, and the Death Company found itself overextended and unsupported. In another battle, Death Company armed with power fists managed to topple an enemy armiger in close combat after their Inferno pistols bounced off its armor. But the victory came at the cost of unit cohesion and strategic positioning. Once committed, Death Company warriors cannot retreat, cannot regroup, and cannot adapt to changing battlefield conditions. They push forward until they achieve death or victory, and often both. This is the reality of the Death Company, warriors of extraordinary power and fury who require constant guidance to prevent them from destroying everything around them. Chaplains walk a razor's edge, maintaining just enough control to aim these living weapons at the enemy while knowing that at any moment, the delusion might slip beyond their ability to manage. Every deployment is a calculated risk, weighing the tactical advantage of unleashing warriors who feel no fear or pain against the possibility that they might turn on their own allies or expend themselves uselessly against hardened targets. The Death Company represents both the Blood Angels' greatest shame and their most devastating asset, warriors transformed by tragedy into instruments of war who seek only the death that was denied to their primarch. But what happens to those who fall to the Black Rage outside of battle, or worse, those who survive their deployment with the Death Company and remain trapped in madness? Chapter 3: The Tower and the Secret. The Death Company exists because the Blood Angels can direct their damned warriors toward the enemy with reasonable confidence they will die in the process. But war is unpredictable, and sometimes these warriors survive their deployment despite facing impossible odds. Sometimes a Blood Angel falls to the Black Rage during peacetime, when there is no battle to send them toward and no honorable death waiting. These inconvenient survivors and untimely afflictions create a problem that threatens to expose the chapter's greatest secret to the wider Imperium. The solution is the Tower of Amareo on Baal, known more ominously as the Tower of the Lost, a prison that holds those who have crossed a line from which there can be no return. The tower does not house the Death Company awaiting deployment, though many assume this is its purpose. Those warriors are kept in separate chambers under the watchful eyes of chaplains, maintained in a state of barely controlled fury through constant liturgy and hypno-conditioning. The tower holds something far more disturbing, Blood Angels who have not only fallen to the Black Rage but have also succumbed so completely to the Red Thirst that they have begun to mutate. These are not the noble warriors in black armor who seek redemption through death. They are gene-seed abominations, twice the size of space marines, with bulging muscles, yellow fangs, and dry red skin stretched tight over malformed frames. They move with an ape-like gait, their enhanced physiology twisted into something that barely resembles human. These are the monsters beneath the polished exterior of every Blood Angel, the Red Thirst made tangible and terrible. Understanding what created these abominations requires distinguishing between the two curses that plague Sanguinius' sons. The Red Thirst is the older affliction, a genetic flaw that existed even before the Horus Heresy. It manifests as an unnatural craving for blood and flesh, a vampiric hunger that can be temporarily satisfied through feeding or suppressed through mental discipline and meditation. The Blood Angels have always struggled with this urge, keeping it hidden from outsiders who might view it as corruption. The Black Rage, by contrast, came later, born from the psychic shockwave of Sanguinius' death. It is not a craving but a curse, a psychological defect that traps the afflicted in their primarch's final memories. Where the Red Thirst can be managed, the Black Rage offers no escape except through death. When two curses become one, the true horror emerges when both afflictions combine. A Blood Angel who falls to the Black Rage loses the mental discipline necessary to resist the Red Thirst. As they relive Sanguinius' death over and over, trapped in an endless loop of trauma and fury, their control over their vampiric hunger erodes completely. They begin to feed compulsively, obsessively, driven by instincts they can no longer suppress. Over time, measured in months or years of confinement, the unchecked Red Thirst causes mutations. The carefully engineered gene seed begins to break down, producing malformations that transform the afflicted into something that resembles the classical depictions of cornate chaos spawn. Simian-like forms, mouths filled with teeth, red skin that looks burned and stretched. These are the inhabitants of the Tower of Amareo, Blood Angels who have lived too long with both curses active simultaneously. During the devastation of Baal, when Tyranids breached the Arx Angelicum itself, Commander Dante made a decision that revealed just how desperate the situation had become. He ordered the Tower of Amareo opened and its inhabitants unleashed upon the Xenos swarm. What emerged were not warriors but monsters, creatures that had once been his brothers. They could not be given armor or weapons, they could barely be herded toward the enemy. But they could be pointed in the right direction and released, their fury and unnatural strength making them dangerous to anything they encountered. They held the ground long enough for others to escape to the walls, dying as they were always meant to, buying time with their ruined bodies. It is easy to assume the entire contingent perished there, consumed by endless waves of tyrannid organisms, achieving in death what they could never accomplish in the twisted mockery of life they had endured. The tower represents a secret within a secret, an aspect of the Blood Angels' curse that even most of their fellow Space Marines do not know about. When Robout Guilliman visited Baal after the Tyrannid invasion, he questioned Dante about the tower's contents. The exchange was tense, with Guilliman asking directly how those held within were fed. Dante evaded the question, protecting a truth that would be too damning even for the returned Primarch to accept easily. The implication was clear: the inhabitants of the tower were not simply imprisoned warriors waiting for deployment. They were something worse, something that required careful containment and resources that the chapter could barely spare. The weight of secrecy. Maintaining secrecy about the Black Rage requires constant vigilance and careful management of information. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters go to extraordinary lengths to prevent outsiders from learning the full extent of their curse. Any mortal human who witnesses a Blood Angel falling to the Black Rage is terminated without a second thought. The secret is kept equally well from other Space Marine chapters and the hierarchy of the Imperium. Only those with absolute need to know are permitted access to this information, and sharing it with anyone outside the Sanguinary Brotherhood carries immediate execution as punishment. This policy of ruthless information control has allowed the curse to remain hidden for 10,000 years, despite the Black Rage claiming warriors with increasing frequency as the millennia pass. The secrecy becomes complicated when Blood Angels serve in the Deathwatch, an organization that draws Space Marines from multiple chapters to fight Xeno's threats. The Red Thirst and Black Rage curses are open secrets among the Imperium's higher-ups, so Deathwatch Command knows what to look out for and makes accommodations. But the other Space Marines serving alongside Blood Angels in kill teams are not always informed. In the novel Deathwatch, Kryptman's War, as a Deathwatch team approaches a Tyrannid fleet, a flesh tear begins to fall to the Rage. The Watch captain does not know the specifics, but he understands enough to recognize this will be an issue and a danger to the others. Fortunately, another Blood Angel on the ship is able to speak with the flesh tear, and the Rage is calmed temporarily. The incident reveals the delicate balance that must be maintained, enough disclosure to prevent catastrophe, but not so much that the full extent of the curse becomes widely known. The Inquisition knows about the Black Rage, at least in general terms. Some Inquisitors have even been forced to experience it firsthand through psychic means, giving them direct understanding of what the afflicted endure. But knowledge alone does not translate to action. The Blood Angels hold a privileged position within the Imperium. They are first founding, descended from one of the most beloved Primarchs who is essentially the Imperium's equivalent of a martyred angel. Commander Dante serves as the Regent of Imperium Nihilus by order of Guilliman himself. With such political protection and the reality that the Black Rage is always directed at chaos and the enemies of mankind, the Inquisition has limited ability to intervene even when they discover the truth. Post-call modifications to Gene Seed have made the defects less of a secret than they once were, and Guilliman has decided that as long as a chapter has not fully embraced chaos worship, they receive full support regardless of genetic flaws. The exceptions that prove the rule. Across 10,000 years and hundreds of thousands of Blood Angels who have fallen to the Black Rage, only 2 have ever demonstrated any ability to resist or overcome it. The first is Chaplain Lamartz, the Guardian of the Lost, whose unprecedented willpower allows him to maintain control despite being fully afflicted. He remains conscious and capable of leadership, directing the Death Company with effectiveness that no other chaplain can match. But his control is temporary and requires constant effort. Between battles, he must be placed in stasis to prevent the rage from overwhelming him completely. His case offers no real hope for a cure, only proof that exceptional individuals might delay the inevitable through sheer force of will. The second exception is far more dramatic and far more troubling. Mephiston, the chief librarian of the Blood Angels, is the only warrior ever to truly overcome the Black Rage. He fell to the curse and was entombed in the ruins of a building, trapped and left for dead. For 7 days he remained there, alone with nothing but the endless loop of Sanguinius death playing through his mind. Through sheer willpower and perhaps something more, he forced his way back to sanity. When he finally emerged from the rubble, he was no longer the warrior who had fallen. Brother Callisterius was gone, replaced by someone who called himself Mephiston, the Lord of Death. Some argue that Calistarius never truly returned from the Black Rage, that Mephiston is something new and unsettling wearing a familiar face. His psychic powers are now so formidable that he stands as one of the most dangerous individuals in the entire Imperium. Even Commander Dante has brushed against the Black Rage and pulled back from the brink. During his confrontation with the Swarm Lord, he began to see it as Horus, feeling the familiar pull of the curse threatening to drag him into Sanguinius memories. He resisted by reminding himself of a simple truth: I am not Sanguinius. The distinction was enough to anchor him to reality and prevent his fall. But Dante's near miss only reinforces how close every blood angel lives to the edge of madness. Even the chapter master, with centuries of experience and iron discipline, is not immune to the psychic imprint encoded in his gene seed. Blanks, individuals with the pariah gene who create zones of psychic nullification, can temporarily disable the Black Rage in afflicted blood angels. In the novel Penitent by Dan Abnett, a blank's presence provides relief from the curse's effects. But this is not a practical solution for a chapter that numbers in the hundreds and operates across vast distances. Blanks are rare, and relying on their presence would require fundamental changes to how the blood angels organize and deploy their forces. The temporary nature of the relief also means it offers no permanent cure, only a brief respite before the rage returns once the blank moves away. The psychological burden. Every blood angel lives with the knowledge that they carry both the red thirst and the potential for Black Rage in their genetic code. They watch their brothers carefully, looking for warning signs that someone is about to fall. They maintain rigorous discipline and engage in meditation practices designed to keep both afflictions under control. They participate in blood-drinking rituals that satisfy the red thirst without descending into mindless feeding. These practices walk a dangerous line, bordering on the kind of chaos-tainted behavior that would bring inquisitorial censure if discovered. But they are necessary to maintain the facade of normalcy and prevent the wholesale corruption of the chapter. The sanguinary priests bear special responsibility for monitoring their brothers' genetic stability. They conduct regular examinations, checking for signs that the gene seed is degrading or that the red thirst is manifesting with unusual intensity. The blood angel's gene seed is exceptionally powerful, capable of transforming even horrifically mutated individuals into functioning space marines through the process called insanguination. New recruits receive a single dose of blood angel's blood that must be maintained for an entire year during their transformation. Most die. Those who survive become space marines carrying both the gifts and curses of Sanguinius' genetic legacy. This transformative power makes the gene seed valuable despite its flaws, but it also means every new blood angel begins their service already marked by the same doom that claimed their predecessors. The successor chapters each handle their curses differently, though all maintain death companies and all keep their secrets carefully guarded. The flesh tearers are particularly notorious for the severity of their afflictions, with their red thirst manifesting more aggressively and their black rage striking more frequently. Their chapter barely maintains cohesion, constantly on the edge of falling completely to their genetic flaws. The angels sanguine, by contrast, have developed elaborate rituals and meditative practices that help their warriors maintain control. But no amount of variation in approach changes the fundamental reality. Every chapter descended from Sanguinius carries the psychic imprint of his death, and every warrior bearing that gene seed faces the same inevitable question of when, not if, they will hear their Primarch's final scream echoing through their mind. This burden shapes everything about Blood Angels' culture and their relationships with other chapters. They are simultaneously honored for their noble heritage and feared for the curse they carry. They maintain their secrecy not out of shame alone, but because exposure would likely result in their censure or destruction despite their long service to the Imperium. The Tower of Amareo stands as a physical reminder of what waits for those who lose control, a prison filled with the monsters they might become if their discipline ever falters. Yet despite this constant threat and the knowledge that their curse grows worse with each passing century, the Blood Angels continue to fight with distinction and honor, clinging to the nobility their Primarch embodied even as his death continues to claim his sons one by one. But the Black Rage does more than just claim individual warriors. How has this curse shaped the Blood Angels' tactical doctrine and their approach to warfare itself? Chapter 4, The Doctrine of Inevitable Death. The Black Rage does not simply kill Blood Angels, it fundamentally shapes how they fight, how they organize their forces, and how they approach warfare itself. A chapter that knows every warrior carries the seed of madness in their gene seed cannot rely on the same long-term strategic planning that benefits other Space Marine chapters. The Blood Angels have adapted by embracing tactical doctrines that play to their strengths while acknowledging their inevitable losses. Their preference for shock assault and close-quarters combat is not merely tradition or personal inclination, it is a practical response to living with the knowledge that control and discipline might shatter at any moment. The Blood Angels specialize in rapid, devastating close-quarters strikes that hit the enemy before they can properly react. They favor jump packs and assault loadouts that allow them to close distance quickly and engage in melee where their natural advantages become overwhelming. This tactical preference directly connects to the red thirst, which strengthens them in close combat and drives them toward the enemy. When a Blood Angels unit charges into combat, the rage simmering beneath the surface of their thoughts lends great strength to their blows. Game mechanics reflect this reality. Charging Blood Angels units receive additional attacks and significant strength increases to their melee weapons. These bonuses represent the barely controlled fury that distinguishes Sanguinius sons from other Space Marines, the genetic legacy that makes them extraordinarily dangerous in close combat and extraordinarily vulnerable to losing themselves entirely. The chapter's elite units showcase this doctrine at its most refined. The Sanguinary Guard represent the pinnacle of Blood Angels' martial excellence, veterans so skilled that only 25 hold this position at any given time. Originally formed as Sanguinius' personal bodyguard during the Great Crusade, they now serve as honor guards for chapter masters and captains across the Blood Angels and their successor chapters. They wear golden armor and ornate death masks, wielding master-crafted weapons with deadly precision. Their combat effectiveness stems not just from skill but from their ability to channel the red thirst without losing control, walking the razor's edge between enhanced capability and complete madness. When equipped with power fists and other heavy weapons, Sanguinary Guard can punch through enemy armor and devastate elite infantry with terrifying efficiency. They exemplify what Blood Angels aspire to be, warriors who harness their genetic advantages while maintaining the discipline and nobility that separates them from berserkers. Tactical integration of the damned. The Death Company presents unique tactical challenges that require careful planning and battlefield awareness. These warriors cannot be controlled through normal command structures or positioned for complex maneuvers. They howl the name of Horus Lupercal and scream in fury, unfeeling and immune to pain, shepherded into battle by chaplains like rabid dogs before being loosed upon the foe. Despite these limitations, the Death Company remains an incredibly valuable tactical asset when properly deployed. Tournament-winning Blood Angels lists frequently feature multiple Death Company units, recognizing their ability to deliver devastating damage when pointed at the right targets. A recent competitive list used 3 full Death Company units alongside Sanguinary Guard and Jump Pack Intercessors, creating a lead assault force capable of overwhelming enemy positions through sheer aggression. Deployment timing proves crucial for Death Company effectiveness. Revealing these units too early in the deployment phase provides opponents with valuable information about where the assault will fall. Experienced Blood Angels commanders often hold back at least one nasty jump pack assault unit to deploy via deep strike on their opponent's turn, using the rapid ingress stratagem to place overwhelming force exactly where needed. This approach maintains operational security while maximizing the Death Company's shock value. The key is ensuring these units have clear paths to high-value targets, enemy commanders, crucial support units, or vulnerable objective holders. Death Company squads designed purely for objective claiming remain too small and vulnerable to sustained fire, dying easily without achieving meaningful tactical impact. Instead, they must be sized and equipped to deliver genuine threat, forcing opponents to commit significant resources to stopping them or risk losing control of the battlefield. The Liberator Assault Group detachment represents the Blood Angels doctrine at its most aggressive and effective. This formation provides substantial bonuses to charging units, including stratagems that grant lethal hits and lance abilities to melee attacks. When a Blood Angels captain leads a unit in this detachment, they can access both bonuses simultaneously, creating devastating damage output against even the toughest enemy units. The formation works because it acknowledges a fundamental truth about Blood Angels: they are strongest when moving forward, when closing with the enemy, when giving themselves over to the controlled fury that defines their combat style. Standing still and trading fire at range wastes their genetic advantages and exposes them to the very battlefield conditions where their curse becomes liability rather than asset. The strategic cost of genetic instability. Every Blood Angels commander must account for inevitable losses to the Black Rage when planning campaigns. Other chapters can reasonably expect that warriors who survive a battle will be available for the next engagement, barring recovery time for wounds. The Blood Angels cannot make this assumption. A warrior who fights with distinction in one battle might succumb to the rage on the eve of the next, removing them from the order of battle permanently. This attrition compounds over extended campaigns, forcing commanders to maintain larger reserves and plan for degraded combat effectiveness as time progresses. The Seventh Black Crusade demonstrated this brutal reality when the Blood Angels found themselves nearly extinct after prolonged conflict against Abaddon's forces on Mak'Khan. The curse claimed warriors at an accelerating rate as the campaign wore on, ultimately leaving Reclusiarch Thalastian Jorus with only shattered remnants and a death company to accomplish what an entire chapter had failed to achieve. The secrecy requirements impose additional strategic constraints. Blood Angels must carefully manage when and where they deploy death company units to avoid revealing their curse to uninformed allies or potential enemies within the Imperium. Fighting alongside Imperial Guard regiments or other Space Marine chapters requires constant vigilance to prevent incidents that might expose the full extent of the genetic instability. The Flesh Tearers' notorious incident where their death company slaughtered an entire guardsman gun line after killing the Orks they had been deployed against represents exactly the kind of catastrophe that could trigger inquisitorial investigation. Such events force difficult choices, silence witnesses permanently, maintain elaborate cover stories, or face potential censure from authorities who might decide the chapter's curse outweighs their value to the Imperium. Successor chapters handle these challenges differently based on the severity of their afflictions. The Flesh Tearers suffer from particularly aggressive manifestations of both the Red Thirst and Black Rage, pushing them to the edge of viability as a functioning chapter. Their combat doctrine reflects this desperation, favoring even more aggressive close-quarters tactics and accepting higher casualty rates in pursuit of victory. By contrast, the Angels Sanguine have developed elaborate meditative practices and blood-drinking rituals that help their warriors maintain control for longer periods. These differences in approach stem from variations in how the curse manifests across different genetic lines, though all chapters descended from Sanguinius face the same fundamental challenge. They must find ways to channel inevitable madness into tactical advantage before it consumes them entirely. The psychological warfare dimension. The Blood Angel's reputation for ferocity and close-quarters combat prowess serves as a psychological weapon in its own right. Enemies who understand what golden armor and red drop pods signify know they face warriors driven by barely controlled fury, Space Marines who become stronger and faster as they close to melee range. This knowledge affects enemy decision-making, forcing them to commit resources to screening and defensive positioning that might otherwise be used more aggressively. Opponents facing Blood Angels for the first time receive standard tactical advice: screen wide, deny deep strike opportunities, keep them at distance where possible. The necessity of this defensive posture grants the Blood Angels initiative even before the first shots are fired, shaping the battlefield in their favor simply through their presence. Death Company units amplify this psychological effect dramatically. Enemies confronting warriors who feel no pain, acknowledge no fear, and will not stop until they achieve death or victory must commit overwhelming force to stop their advance. The War of Broken Wings demonstrated this when 300 Death Company warriors forced entire enemy capital ships to divert resources to repelling borders, creating opportunities for the broader Angel Sanguine fleet to maneuver and strike. The enemy could not ignore the threat these warriors represented, yet committing forces to contain them weakened other positions. This is the paradox of the Death Company: they are simultaneously out of control and precisely controlled, madmen who nonetheless serve clear tactical purposes through the direction of skilled chaplains. The curse also affects Blood Angel psychology in ways that shape their combat effectiveness. They are not fearless in the sense of being incapable of feeling fear. On Cybele, Blood Angels admitted that after seeing so many of their comrades fall to the Black Rage, they are afraid. But this fear does not paralyze them or cause hesitation in battle. Instead, it drives them to fight with even greater determination, knowing that any engagement might be their last before the curse claims them. They understand viscerally what other Space Marines know only intellectually, that death in service to the Emperor is not merely possible but inevitable, and that the manner of their death will likely involve losing themselves to madness before the end. This knowledge creates warriors who fight with desperate intensity, who give everything in every battle because they understand they have nothing to hold back for. Living with the unresolvable. The Black Rage has no cure. 10,000 years of research by the sanguinary priests has produced methods for managing symptoms, techniques for identifying warriors on the verge of falling, and protocols for deploying the afflicted to maximum tactical advantage. But nothing has stopped the curse from claiming warriors or offered any path back from madness once it takes hold. Mephiston remains the sole exception, and his case provides more questions than answers about whether he truly overcame the rage or simply replaced one form of possession with another. Lamartz demonstrates that willpower can delay the inevitable, but even his remarkable control requires stasis between battles to prevent complete descent. The curse grows stronger with each passing century, claiming warriors more frequently and at younger ages than in previous millennia. The Primary's reinforcements provided through Archmago's calls genetic work offered hope for a solution. These new warriors, created with improved gene seed and enhanced biological processes, were supposed to be more resistant to the flaws that plagued earlier generations. Initial assessment suggested the modifications had succeeded in reducing the frequency and severity of both the Red Thirst and Black Rage. But time has revealed that the Primaries are not immune, merely delayed. The psychic imprint of Sanguinius' death remains embedded in the gene seed regardless of what improvements have been made to other aspects of their biology. The curse is not a genetic flaw in the conventional sense that can be edited out or corrected through better engineering. It is a psychic trauma transmitted through blood and gene seed across 10,000 years, and no amount of biological enhancement can erase that fundamental reality. The Blood Angels continue to fight, continue to recruit, continue to maintain their noble facade even as they watch their brothers fall one by one to the curse they all carry. They preserve the memory of Sanguinius through art, sculpture, and ritual, honoring the father whose death created their torment. They maintain the highest standards of discipline and conduct, determined to embody the nobility their Primarch represented even though his final moments threatened to consume them all. This is perhaps the deepest tragedy of the Black Rage. It forces Sanguinius' sons to carry the weight of his sacrifice in the most literal and painful way possible, ensuring that the angel's death can never be forgotten because it replays endlessly in the minds of those who bear his genetic legacy. In my view, what makes the Black Rage particularly fascinating from a narrative perspective is how it explores the cost of genetic engineering and the unintended consequences of creating superhuman warriors. The Emperor designed the Primarchs and their Space Marine sons to be the ultimate soldiers, but the psychic bonds that made them so effective also created vulnerabilities that could not have been predicted. When Sanguinius died, that bond did not simply break, it created a permanent wound that continues to bleed across generations. The curse asks uncomfortable questions about identity and memory. If you experience someone else's trauma so completely that you cannot distinguish it from your own lived experience, is that memory any less real? The Blood Angels falling to the Black Rage genuinely believe they are Sanguinius facing Horus. To them, the memory is not inherited or second-hand, it is immediate and overwhelming. This raises profound questions about what defines us as individuals when our genetic code carries experiences we never actually lived through. What I find most compelling about this law is the fundamental unfairness at its core. The Blood Angels did nothing wrong. Sanguinius did nothing wrong. They fought loyally for the Imperium, made every sacrifice asked of them, and their reward is a curse that slowly destroys them from within. There is no villain to defeat who will lift the affliction, no quest they can undertake to earn redemption. The curse simply exists, as inexorable as gravity, claiming warriors regardless of their worthiness or their efforts to resist. This stands in stark contrast to other tragic elements in Warhammer lore. The Thousand Sons fell because of Magnus' arrogance. The World Eaters embraced the Butcher's nails willingly in pursuit of martial perfection. But the Blood Angels are victims of circumstance, punished for a psychic bond they did not create and could not prevent. Personally, I believe the Black Rage functions as a meditation on grief and trauma that cannot be processed or resolved. The Blood Angels cannot move past Sanguinius' death because it is not a historical event for them, it is a present reality waiting in their genetics. Every Blood Angel knows they will eventually fall, that the curse will claim them just as it claimed their brothers before them. Yet they continue to fight, continue to maintain their honor and discipline, continue to embody the ideals Sanguinius represented even though his death literally drives them mad. There is something deeply human in that stubborn nobility, that refusal to surrender to despair even when the outcome is guaranteed. The Blood Angels remind us that tragedy is not defined by the ending but by how we conduct ourselves while moving toward that inevitable conclusion. They know they are doomed, and they choose honor anyway. That choice